Welcome to Next Gen Business Builders, where we have conversations, share insights, and stories from next generation leaders that are working to scale their businesses in real time. My name is Bethany Venekamp. I'm the COO and integrator of Cybertech Systems. I'm here with our visionary, our founder, Cole Nicholas, and I'm really excited about today's topic. We're going to talk about one of the biggest challenges in business growth. It's the hiring and building your team. We'll share some of our own journey, some of the wins we're proud of, some of the missteps we've learned from, and some of the lessons that every next generation leader needs to hear about building the right team. To get into it today, Cole, just like our first question, kick us off with, do you remember your very first hire? What emotion kind of stands out about that first leap to, add someone to the payroll?
Yeah, that one's, super scary, because you don't really have consistent payroll well, I guess general revenue figured out anyway. And so the reality is, when that isn't consistent, then, that one's just incredibly difficult, but to make that leap, to make that, first step is really, really hard, but rewarding in the sense where you it's the only time in your business where you can double the capacity of work. I mean, if you're able to hire someone, that knows what they're doing and you don't have to educate them, it's the only time in your business where you can literally double your throughput in one fell swoop. And it's really cool in the sense where you feel like you got a lot done in a short amount of time. It's kind of like framing a house. The structure stands up pretty fast, but the additional stuff that comes with it on the backside, crazy scary. Yep.
So for you, what pushed you to take the leap? I know for business owners, it can be different things. Sometimes it's truly a capacity issue. Sometimes it's a knowledge or a skill issue. Like you find there's a piece you can't do yourself, or you stumble upon this person that you're like, you're great. I'll find a place for you somehow.
Yeah. For me, it has always been a capacity issue. I have attempted over the years to venture into areas where it is not my strong suit, and it's the strong suit of another employee or another person as a part of the business. Um, and that generally, in some ways, has worked out. In some instances, in others, it hasn't. But the reality is that for me and my business, I guess it's always been a capacity issue. So we had ample amount of work. We had a short amount of hands to do the work, and effectively, what ends up happening is you're like, okay, I've got enough work stacked up in front of me that it can probably support the next person for 2, maybe 3 months, and then who knows after that, because everything's completely up in the air. But yeah, it really makes a difference because you feel like, okay, I've got a bunch of work stacked up. I can't get to it all myself. I guess I'll just, if push comes to shove, I will hire this person, and then if there isn't enough money to go around, then I just won't eat. I'll just figure out a way to pay them and not me. And it's crazy how long you have to exist in that mode if your revenue isn't just exploding. Because it seems like at least for our business, it was slower growth in those first year or two and it was very similar to that model.
Yeah, you do your best to calculate it so that everyone's still gonna eat at the end of the day, but it's a it's a risk that the work is gonna stay in front of you to keep two people busy.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's like I said, it you feel, especially if it's your first time, first business, it's really euphoric to feel like you're getting through so much work now, and you're starting to see the gross revenue results of two people rather than one, and that number looks much different and then continues to compound as things go. But yeah, it's I don't know. That first one's crazy. The first one's pretty fun.
Did you have any reservations, like along the lines of, I'm just going to micromanage this person because my name's on this and there's no way that they're going to do it as well as me? And almost like it's just going to be more work for me because now I just am going to have to double check everything and be two places at once.
Yeah, that's hard. I don't know that I have the corner of all knowledge on this one. I for sure, all I can tell you is about my experience, which is I hired someone that was in some way, shape, and form had a deeper form of knowledge for the results, for the work that was in front of us immediately. And so there wasn't a lot of hand-holding that needed to happen in the work that was immediately put in front of them, but there was a bunch of education along the way in the areas where they were short. And so that was one of those things that you learn along the way of how much work it is to educate and upskill and do process procedure and onboard your employees and all of these extra things along the way. But that was kind of the blessing, I guess, of my first hire, which was the ability to we've got this really big project and it's far bigger than what I can handle. I need to be able to have a second set of hands so we can chew through all of this and load balance. Um, and then just throwing that out there in the hopes that they are interested, feel the same way, and feel like it's a worthwhile challenge that they want to come join you in.
Mm, yeah. And I think along the lines of capacity and calculating that to know if you can bring on another laborer or someone who's going to help you deliver services, because that seems to be where the first hire is like another hammer swinger, like we've talked about in previous episodes. I was just coaching with an entrepreneur a few weeks ago, and he is getting to the point where he's turning down calls that come in, but he's like, "I'm not tracking that." But he just knows he is. So he has this sense that there's too much. But one of the first data points was like, well, let's spend a couple months like actually tracking how many calls do you turn in you can't service and what might be like a dollar amount you could put to those, and just
Sure.
collect some data for a few months to find out like how much work really are you turning down. It's hard to just by feel go like, I think this is too much for one person. I'm starting to feel it spill over. But um obviously everyone's going to try to go forward in a way that's most calculated, where you have looked ahead and you feel like I'm not just gambling, there really is the work there to support two
Yeah,
people.
absolutely. That's a really strategic way to do that. Um, and for me, I really wanted I have a tendency in some cases to just say yes and then figure it out after the fact. And I try to do that in a way where I have the back end of it sort of figured out, as I'm in the process of saying yes to the business. So like an instance of that would be, so we run technology, or we do technology in a rural market. And so it is my job, my business, my livelihood to know all of the people with technology skill sets in a pretty wide area at around us. And so, one, I need to know their names. I need to know their instances, what they've got going on, what their situation is, whether they're happily employed, whether they're not, if it's kind of in a gray area or whatever that looks like. And then make those acquaintances, make those interactions, and get on a first name basis with them so that um, I can start to understand whether they would, who they are, one, and then two, would they be employable? And unfortunately, on those first ones, it's kind of hard to scrutinize to death who that person is and if they're a right seat, right fit thing that EOS teaches. Because and often, you just start in the hopes that it will work. And in our case, both our first and our third hire are still with us. Um, and that has been really cool. And we've all developed along the way. Now we're coming up on year 5, but ultimately, it's I love being able to know who in the area is employable and has the skill sets I need so that I can kind of have them on the hook, so to speak, or at least have already had that conversation of, are you looking? Would you be willing? Would you want to take on some side work? And it's a great way to already know, man, I've got this super valuable project that's in front of me. I want to go bid it. I want to go chase after it, but maybe I'm short by 50% on it, or maybe I'm short by 25% on it. Okay, well, I need to go find somebody for help on that. What's the likelihood that I can snag these folks, rope them in, all boats lift, and we knock the project out?
Okay, so tell a story a little bit of the landscape at Cybertech. You hired your first employee back in 2020, I believe.
20, yeah, it was just getting done at 19, coming into 20. And yeah, so I guess my story is that I had there was a local hometown kid that was um, excellent with tech, and all of Main Street and the school board and everybody, as soon as they knew I had put my shingle out that the business was here, then I just had random people come talk to me and say, "You should talk to this guy." And I thought, okay, well, cool, whatever, and didn't really think anything of it. And then finally, another individual who I trust and came and talked to me and said, "You should really go call this guy." And so I did, and we sat down at the local diner, the Homesteader #2, and we just sat and talked. And he's not what you would call super communicative. Um, Excellent tech, but his communicate like he just didn't talk. He didn't talk in school. I went and visited everybody that knew him. A young kid, he was like 19 years old. And anyway, he didn't talk. And then at the end of my 15-minute spiel about who I am and what I want to do, and here's what I want to accomplish, his response was, "Yeah, sounds good."
All
And that
right.
was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then, I mean, there wasn't anything else to do other than show up. Here's the hourly, and we'll just start work. What do you think? Okay, I'll see you then. That was it.
And he's been with you ever since.
Yep.
How about like then you hired how many people? I mean, over the years, how many people have you had employed at Cybertech? Maybe not all at one time, but just through the years. I'm trying to think the
Yeah.
total number.
I don't know of a total number off the top of my head. I would say it's probably close to 12.
Okay.
I mean, we're at 6 or 7 now. Probably double that, I would imagine. We've had some turnover over the years, and um, anyway, yeah, it has been a roller coaster from start to finish, and it will be a roller coaster. There's no way out of it. But the thing I knew that I absolutely had to do, wanted to do, after my experience as an employee, is I wanted to be the manager that I never had. I wanted to be excellent in that area. I wanted to be considering and thoughtful and build a team rather than burn a team. And, you know, I think I've had 11 managers in my life, and I count 3 of them as excellent. The rest of them were just kind of, varying degrees of okay and not okay. So anyway, it's just been a wild ride, and we've had some really great hires. We've had some really bad hires. um, but it's part of the journey. It's part of the game. It's part of the notion of doing business. There's no way out of it. People are weird, sticky knothead creatures, and they've all got different ideas. It is herding cats, but at the end of the day, if you can make them feel loved and feel seen and feel heard, then you've got a really good chance at a good go at a business.
Yeah. Okay. So you've been through this kind of onboarding, offboarding, and you've had some employees for the entire duration of the business. Some have come and gone in the middle there. How do you decide? How maybe were you deciding? Was that best practice? How do you feel now? But about whether your next hire is going to be someone who is going to earn revenue or someone who's going to maybe save time but not be right out there delivering the service.
Sure. Yeah, for me, it comes down to I want to hire on the last episode we talked about hammer swingers and clipboard holders. And for me personally, and I probably have this wrong, but it's the way I did it, is I wanted to hire as many hammer swingers that I possibly could in order to generate the most amount of revenue. And that's tricky because not all revenue is good revenue. There's some revenue that's just keeps you stagnant as a business, and then there's some revenue that's actually profitable. And so there wasn't a lot of strategy. I just knew that in volume, we would be able to find a profit somewhere because I didn't really know what I was doing. We were just going to figure it out. And so we went that level, that distance for quite a while, hiring hammer swingers, where we could find them, and then where we could not, then hiring just random, call them civilians, like non-technical folks, and trying to turn them into hammer swingers. And that worked to varying degrees of success and not at all. And it was, it's chaotic and fun and, works and doesn't work in the same moment at the same time. And it wasn't until that the money, the gross revenue, and all of the invoices and estimates and um, business insurance and all the different documents that came around, and they're kind of swirling around you like a hurricane of craziness, that you begin to really think like, man, we should figure out an ancillary person to kind of help manage all of this because this is crazy. And so what that was my way of going forward is hire as many people that can generate revenue as possible so that we can not only pay everybody, they need to not only be able to support their salary, but be able to um, go in excess of that so that there is some profit left over in order to expand the business and then one day support an ancillary role. And I just knew that was going to be the way to go. And so that's how we chose. I don't know if it's right or not, but that's what we did.
Yeah. And I think that's something that's been cool in the maturing and learning the EOS framework, which we've begun to adopt, is that they really challenge you to draw out an accountability chart, which is where you begin to create a seat for your ideal business and your ideal company, how it's going to operate before you even worry about the names. And I think that is just like a growing up thing we a lot, or I a lot speak to, like being like a child, or you're in that awkward teenage phase, and then you're like maturing into adulthood. And I just feel that the seasons change even in business. And I think part of the maturing we've done is to go, instead of just like hiring a little bit reactively or just like out of, oh my goodness, there's so much going on, to hire it from a more strategic place of, we're trying to get to this direction. We're trying to head towards this end goal. And here's the seats we're going to need to make that happen, and putting the right people in those. And then really identifying like where are gaps. And so instead of, I think when you get too busy and you're just swinging a hammer, it's hard to see. When you slow down in some of the EOS practices of IDSing and really pinpointing an issue, you might think your gap is over in finance, but actually your gap might be in marketing, or your gap might be a lack of personnel in in your project work or in your manufacturing side of things, like, I think it's really interesting that you can begin to dive deeper and go, is really where do we need another person? Where do we need another set of hands for the business's needs? And I know that it's been a temptation, and you get good people on your team who do come with a variety of skill sets. So that's definitely created some opportunities for cyber tech to sort of like deviate or head to the left or to the right based on like the interests of the people or these kind of like passion projects of the different people you've hired. And with EOS we're starting to say, hey, here's actually the vision, the goal. And so it's less about each individual's passion projects pulling us in the direction the business is going to go, but more the overarching vision and structure.
Yeah, no,
Um,
absolutely. We, those passion projects were a really fun experiment that we tried at one point in time after reading. There was a book out by Google, I think, the Google Way or something like that, that talked about 20% time that Google did. And so that was one of the experiments that we did in order to see if there was anything that would come out of that, basically, that would be that would help prop up our business and help us grow in a new direction. And I can't remember what all of those were. Some of them were awesome, some of them not so awesome. But it was just fun because it breathed life into the employees. It created a culture of fun again rather than straight productivity. And that was pretty neat. Um, Yeah, it was just it was a neat, fun time to be able to do that. The other thing is like when you're young as a company, as a corporation, I think it's the perfect opportunity to see what you can do. And if, we live and die by the notion of if you're going to fail, we want to fail fast and we want to fail cheap. And so the notion is I would rather try 10 things for $1 than try one thing for a long time and it costs me $100. Because sometimes in the spreading out of 10 things and just dipping your toe in it, you'll get a really good understanding of, is this something that I could replicate? Is this something that I could try and teach others to do? And is it supportable on the back end? Would I be able to hire for someone to be able to come behind and do this work? And I think when you are a young business, when you're young in the business, it's the perfect time to do that. And um, as you go, the reality is that you get more of an understanding about the revenue that you're pulling in. And so you might have 3 or 4 or 5 different streams of revenue, and you'll get a really good understanding of like, oh, I really like these 2 streams because they're really profitable. And these other 3, like they keep us busy in the slow times, so we can't really throw them away. And they're kind of profitable. They might need some polishing, right? And those 3, there's some different strategies you can do to either we're going to hang those in a closet and we'll look at them at another day, or um, or we'll just quit them entirely and we're just going to focus on these 2. Those are some of the biggest decisions that we've had to make coming just lately, even in the last year and a half, 2 years, of like, what are we truly going to hone in on? What are we truly going to focus in on? And um, put all of our eggs in one basket in the hopes that we can ride this pony to a profitable conclusion.
Yeah, it's like some of the pruning even that you would do to a plant so that you're like, "Hey, I need to direct its best energy and resources to this, and so I have to prune off some of the other things that were taking people's time and they were fun, but like, yeah, there wasn't profit there." And that's where you do have to have a little capacity with people who hold clipboards, who have time to stop after the end of a project to go, "Wait a minute, let's look back and see Kinda like collect some data. Okay, we love these customers. They always pay on time. We love these kind of, they're easy to work with, these kind of projects. All of that takes a bit of reflection and just someone who has the time to start doing that.
Yep.
So now to kind of segue us just a little bit into some of you hinted on this with like managers and to direct reports. And I know we've talked about ancillary roles for some of the strategy, but just for like management, like how did you ever feel at a point you knew you wanted to be a good manager? That was important to you when you started your own business. Um, so how did you know that right like direct report to manager ratio? Maybe in the past did you have a bad experience or was like they don't have time, they had too many direct reports? Have you felt that tension where you've hit a ceiling of like, I can't deal with one more person reporting to me?
Yeah, so in the business, absolutely. At least I did. I had a certain amount of had no idea what I was doing, so, like, I'll just hire people until it gets too much, and then we'll find the next person. And usually, you kind of forget about that notion. You get into a project knee deep, you get overloaded, the amount of communication and expectation is all around, and you've got people on the sideline staring at you, waiting for instructions and whatever else. And you can't possibly communicate to all of them all at once. That's usually the kind of the breaking point when it really makes the most sense to find an ancillary person to help with all of the communication lifts that you've got to do, and preferably take that over and be autonomous in that role. That's a hard thing to one, hire for, but then two, to do successfully. It's easy to hire an executive assistant or something like that. It's another thing to be able to train them on the right process procedures, if you have process procedures at all, which is a good reason to have them, because then you can duplicate your efforts. But
Mhm.
yeah, the normal human, um, seems to kind of tap out between 5 and about 11 direct reports. 11 if you're Iron Man, and 5 if you struggle with communication in general. But
Mhm.
7 seems to be about the average, that most companies, and managers can kind of handle well. 7 direct reports. After that, the capacity just kind of breaks down. And you have a what's called diminishing returns. But absolutely, I've had managers in the past when I was an employee that was they had 15 or 20 direct reports, and they had no time for you. The only time you saw them is when they were presenting at a meeting, at like a weekly or a monthly meeting, and the quarterlies were once a year, if ever, and you just didn't really have a good finger on the pulse around what things were going well and what weren't. And so ultimately what ends up happening is you feel really isolated and really disjointed in that capacity, because you never get to feel like you get to take anybody's time that is, how should I say that? You just don't feel worthy, so to speak, of having someone being able to visit with you. And so it tends to ostracize and isolate you.
Yeah. I think something that has really stood out for you and I, and we've talked about it a little bit, is Daniel Priestley's framework for team evolution. And he kind of talks through how teams grow. And he's done a lot of pattern recognition to kind of see how these trends play out as businesses start up and scale. And so usually at 1 to 2 employees, you have some people that are wearing every hat. And I think he calls them a jack of all trades. You're gonna have someone who is incredible at the start of your business. They're a jack of all trades. Sadly, as the company scales, often that person doesn't have a seat long term just because they're good at a lot of things, but don't necessarily have an excellence or expertise in any one as the business maybe starts to silo departments or roles. But Then at 2 to 4, you're usually small enough still for one leader to keep oversight, but some cracks may show up. And then as you get pushing above 4, that's when management starts to matter. People need clarity and structure, and you can kind of hang in there for 4 to 8. I've heard that's the sweet spot. And when you kind of push the 12 employee envelope, he calls it the complexity cliff, but things just totally change. You're in the big leagues now. You can't just keep running on hustle and having good management. And this is really like where you're going to start having these middle management, but then you've got people in the C suite, and all of those clear roles and accountability becomes essential. Would you say this is like have you experienced this team evolution at Cybertech? Do you disagree or agree with any parts of it?
No, I like it. He goes on in that framework, it kind of works in doubles basically, 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8. 8, it breaks the double. Instead of going to 16, it goes to 12. He says there's a funky area when you add your 13th employee, and then it gets better. I think when you get up to, is it 31?
Yeah, I think once you cross the 30.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I love his writing on this notion. He said it is also something that the different militaries abide by, and in their structure and how things work. And so, anyway, I don't know anything about that, but it's just interesting to know that it applies not just in business, but in other organizations as well. And yeah, it's such a
Mhm.
thoughtful way to put a framework around, like almost like a caution sign, a trouble up ahead, get prepared, and there is,
Yeah.
like, we haven't crossed the 12 employee threshold. We are kind of in that 4 to 8 threshold right now. And so once we get up to the 12 mark, then we got to really make sure that our processes and procedures and onboarding, offboarding, education, all these things are really on par to be able to take the next step up.
Yeah, we're in that 4 to 8 spot where it's like, we've noticed that management matters, that there's too many employees maybe for one person, for everyone to be reporting to you. I mean, I know your phone was just like ringing off the hook all day and night. Like, how am I
Yep.
supposed to do this? And where do you want me there? And it was just plus customers, but even just how many times your employees were calling to like interrupt the day and stuff. And so I think we're feeling that management starts to matter, and in the tough spot of feeling top heavy, like, okay, we're putting management into place, we're putting management practices into place, trying to get that clarity, trying to do better structuring of roles, and yet it feels top heavy for us right now.
Yep, because there's gotta be a leap in that 4 to 8 right now that is, the tricky bit in order to get to 12 and get to a spot where you have, like in the EOS system, you've got sales, marketing, you've got operations, you've got finance, and, you've gotta have a director over those 3 main core bodies, right? And then for the folks underneath of that, to put one butt in every seat, and then to have people underneath of them, you're going to have 6, 7, 8 people just to get all of that done. And once you get there, the hope is that you can add some more hammer swingers to be able to generate the revenue of paying for all of the management that's going to happen, and the clipboard work that has to happen to be able to keep everybody in line and going. It's there are these awkward teenage phases between all of these jumps, and there's a real growing pain that happens all the way through it. The least amount of growing pains was 1 to 2 by far. And
It only gets harder
so
from there.
yeah, yeah, it only gets harder from there because you're always, can't remember who said this, but you're always one technician ahead or one technician behind until you get to about 12 to 15, and then it's doable. Um, but we're going to be in that phase right now where we're either one ahead or one behind. We have too many hands or too little hands for quite a while until It all evens out, and we can handle sick days for one or two, and then the rest can cover, and it just kind of flows.
Mhm, mhm. So through all of the hiring that we've done at Cybertech, I want to just talk a little bit about the concept and phrase that we've thrown around a lot. I actually don't even know who to coin it to. I've heard it from a few places. The hire fast, fire fast.
Sure.
Um, and maybe just what are some of your reflections in making a good hire? Um, what would you tell your younger self about when you step into the room with someone? Are they supposed to join your team or not?
If I was going to tell my younger self anything, it is you're not good at this. You should outsource it. But some of the things that I have done well, which are far not outnumber, but I don't know what's the opposite of that. Undernumber? I don't know. Is the notion of I can always turn a good person into a skilled person if I'm willing to educate them. But I can't always turn a skilled person into a good person just because I'm hoping the best for them.
Mm,
And that was something that I really lucked out on my first and third hires.
mm,
Is my second hire was a bit of a train wreck, and we were growing fast, and I'm just like, yeah, anybody, set of hands. It was kind of a sob story. We just made it work, and I felt like the hero. And anyway, what I learned from the second one actually set my course and direction on this hiring HR aspect entirely, which is this is not my strong suit. I am not good at it. I don't want to be good at it. It's wildly uncomfortable. And um, yeah, I mean, that's about it. Which,
mm,
so yeah, going back is the first thing I would always hire for is not aptitude. I would hire for attitude, and I would hire for can-do spirit, and I would hire for evidence of what is the character of that person. I could care less if you don't know how to use tools, or you're a slow learner, or whatever else. I prize loyalty. I prize good natured. I prize character far above whether you're incredible high flyer. And when it is both, it's even better, obviously. But when push comes to shove, it seems like a lot of businesses will hire for skill set first, and then they reap the consequences of dealing with jerks.
mhm,
And I was watching another deal just lately, and the notion is anytime there is negativity in a business, you have to cut it out like a cancer, because if you leave that in a business, it will spread, and your business will be overcome by it, and then your business will die.
mm,
And that negativity, it isn't really something I've lived by up until this point, but it's a notion that I'm considering more and more all the time, which is what is the aptitude of your employees just to be happy, just to be willing to smile, just to be willing to joke, just to be willing to interact and be authentic. And character in my book is far and away higher than anything else, because I don't want to worry about problems in that department. I would much rather worry about problems in you don't have the right skill set. So let's get you educated so I can get you started. You're going to have to learn for on your own for a lot of this, but I'm going to get you started. And then as we go, um, we're going to learn and see what you can do, and hopefully we will be able to grow your skill set down the road and become more valuable.
mm. Yeah, like we use the words because of EOS, the core value fit, right? And most
Sure.
importantly, are they a core value fit before you look at skill sets? And I think in the interviewing hiring process, the first things you're evaluating in your questioning and your initial communications and all of that is like, is there a core value fit, a core value alignment? And depending on what your core values are, someone could be a core value fit for one place and not another. And it's not
Right.
necessarily like a morally higher or lower ground. Just um, that is more important though than the skills. And like you said, additionally, evaluating those skills is important, but can never trump. If they don't fit your core values, it will always turn into a problem and probably turn toxic for the culture of your whole workplace. And I love the four quadrant concept, and I've heard it from many different business coaches. But when you have someone that's a high core value fit and highly skilled, that's where you have your terminator. But when you've got someone like you said who's high skill, low core value, they're just like the jerk. They're toxic to everyone. You can have the puppy who is going to be high core values and the low skill set, and they can't
Right.
get the hang of it. And everyone loves them, and it's just like, but they still can't execute. That's a really tough situation to be in when you're looking at hiring and firing. And then there's the easy ones that I think I shouldn't say letting go of someone's always difficult, but saying no when they're not a core value fit and they're not meeting the performance standards, that's like a pretty clear shouldn't be at your organization, should never have been hired on, or if they are, it's time to go. So I think about that often, and I've even used that in when I'm having reviews with employees and trying to communicate. I've like drawn it and held it up. You are here. We need you here. We need you in this quadrant to keep your job. And I think the visual can be helpful of just to kind of clarify the communication between how the manager sees the situation and how the employee might be seeing the situation. Um, and even charting someone out before you bring them on. That's even a great practice to do within the interview team is to where do you place this person on the four quadrant chart? I think one of the best
Absolutely.
resources that I've learned from when I think about the hire fast, fire fast is top. It's a book called Top Grading. Uh, And it has been huge in the concept of A players versus B players. And that's another language to kind of think of this through is trying to fill your team with A players. And A players want to work with more A players. And they're actually relieved when a B player is let go. They're like, oh, good, we can get back to, and we're not being slowed down by someone who's not performing at their best. So it's been really helpful to read that book and do some reflection on like kind of like what's your batting average? It's like what's your hiring average? How well and how successful are your hires? Um I want to circle back to what you said, Cole, about brings one of your best pieces of advice would be to recognize if you're not good at it and bring someone in. Is that something that you think is a skill that can be learned and grown in, or is that really an innate thing? People have it, people don't.
My answer is gonna be pretty biased, which is I don't have it, I don't wanna learn it, I don't wanna be good at it. Um, I I care about the person, but the conversation feels icky every time. And, like, HR in general, I just struggle with, and it has nothing to do. It's like I still wanna go to a burger feed or, have beers or whatever else. I wanna hang out with it. But it's like I'm a person that's intrinsically motivated, meaning I set goals on the internal. I don't need external motivation, and then I wanna go meet challenges and do things and start things and build things just because I wanna do it, not because someone else is, whatever else. And it's hard for me to think like others who aren't that way. And so it feels almost like I'm manipulating them into doing a certain thing or going a certain way. And at the end of the day, the easiest path forward in the last 5 years that I've found is to find somebody that does have a working genius in that arena who it breathes life into them. Like, and that was probably the biggest aha moment of that book, which Working Genius, which is like that's truly a thing that some people crave, and thank God that those people exist because get that away from me. I don't ever want to do it, talk about it, think about it. Yuck. And because for me it's life stealing, it's just the worst, but for someone else who truly enjoys it, it is the best thing ever. And at least for me it is the best money spent in that regard because it is my probably my weakest thing, um, about my skill set and about my, I think, I don't know, I got quite a few. But at the end of the day, it's just the notion of I know what my weak links are and I need to find someone else to cover for me in those regard. And it just helps so much to find someone that to outsource that to, ideally inside the business, but if not, you can theoretically outsource that to a third party entity that would do that work.
Yeah, and that is an option. It's not one that cybertech has used, but I do know many people who they outsource that or they bring, they kind of consult with someone temporarily just to help them define the seat, define what are those like key roles and responsibilities going to be, all of the things that you kind of need to do before you hire someone, like the best practices of describing the role and what it's going to look like to win at the role. And then, and they can even, so they can help you craft that. And then it can be up to you to do the hiring. They can craft the questions for you to really like tie into each of the key things that are important for the role. Or they can do basically a lot of the hiring for you. So if it isn't something that is life-giving or something you wanna dive into skilling up into, I think there are a lot of resources to kinda outsource that fractionally or consulting-wise as a lift, and another thing I wanna say that I think is interesting with this top grading concept is that you never solo interview. That one of the most important things before you would hire an employee is that, like, there are multiple people speaking into it because I think there probably isn't any one person who can perfectly perceive, a new hire, and so, just like even biblically, the wisdom in many counselors, there's value in a top grading interview is done by many people who then come together, compare notes, and usually make a better decision going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the notion of the multiple interviews because there is, um, sometimes people can have a bad day on an interview, and then sometimes people can have a great day that like it's aces across the board and they just had the right amount of coffee mixture and they would never meet back to those same standards, right? And so being able to have a couple rounds of interviews is fantastic. Another one that I love, and most of this is work that you've done, Bethany, not anything, so I'm just calling out what I think has been impactful for us, would have been bringing them on site as like a third interview of sorts and allowing the team to get to know them. Almost having that like a third interview or even after a third interview, come on site or even remotely. Let's just have the team all join and get a read on the last two or three candidates before we make a decision and have their input, develop some buy-in on that individual is huge. Because when you already have the buy-in from the team, it allows for a really warm welcome and it really diminishes the imposter syndrome. I think it diminishes the imposter syndrome of the new candidate that's coming in because there's no icebreakers that have to happen. Everybody knows their name. We've already, visited with them on the interview and there's something to talk about on their first day and they don't feel like an outcast. And that's pretty cool. because it's very easy to go your first week or 2 weeks and feel really out of place in a big corporate structure. Even if you're inside of a small team or subgroup of a larger entity, it's easy to feel out of place. And in that regard, you already know 7 to 12 people that are like, I know something we can talk about if nothing else, and so it's great. It's a great practice.
Yeah, I think to kind of wrap it up and get really tactical and just share that is currently kind of how our hiring process works, where we just start with one person, that's me, just doing a phone interview. And it's really low pressure and it's a great quick weed out of just like just getting a feel for warmth, just phone skills, conversation skills, not even getting into anything too like tell me about your technical skills or anything like that relating to the task. And the people who just stand out in that then usually get to be in an interview with people in the department heads who are like really going to be stakeholders and their direct managers. So then we have an interview that's usually then just a two-person, a two-on-one, and that's a different situation to be kind of outnumbered in an interview like that. And then after that is usually like once we multiple people have vetted, that's where we involve you, Cole, and we're like, hey, here's what we think. Here's the person. So to try to like buffer you and save your time, but we want to be sure like you are the figurehead of this business and you've set the core values of it. You have to jive with them too. And so that's kind of like our final step is like, do they jive with you? And yeah, having like a quick, I think we've had some of our candidates come to our morning sprints, like where the whole team is in the sprint and they've shown up to just like get to meet everyone in that and it's casual. They get to watch a quick 30-minute meeting that we do as a team and kind of evaluate how we interact and um, get a feel for our culture in that way. So we have we have had some success with that. I feel like
Absolutely.
we've got lots of reps to keep going through with that. Luckily, we haven't had too much turnover since beginning that system. But
Yeah, I
any
think it's a fantastic system. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I far prefer that out of just like randomly picking from the pool that is available short term on a last second notice because a big project came in. And that's um, thankfully it was one of the first hire. That's how that went. The third hire, we did a little more work on that, but ultimately, it was a remote worker that we found off of a site, and we started working with them in short instances, and then kind of developed a relationship, and then it went from there. But ultimately, it's having a plan around the hiring process. Like Stephen Bartlett at DOAC, he's convinced and incredibly interested in this notion of hiring well is the number one piece to a successful business. Because if your business isn't comprised of incredible individuals, it's going to be hard for it to go anywhere. And there's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of merit to that idea. And at the end of the day, being really good at this process of hiring can pay dividends every day for the rest of the business's life, where doing it poorly can really create havoc that you can't just get away from quickly. It's almost like a toothache, you just can't get away from it. And anyway, it's a huge, huge aspect of a business and worthy of consideration for taking a lot of pride and a lot of excellence in.
Yeah. I love to kind of finish on that note. You can't stress the importance of investing your time and doing it well and avoiding the temptation to just sort of haphazard throw someone in. Because the right hire can really be that ticket to transformation for your business. I mean, that's the cool and high note I think to end on at Cybertech is that the people that are here and on our in our business that are the right fit, they're the right people and they're in the right seats, like, it's just magical to watch them work. It's so fun to work alongside them, and they're just, like, just propelling growth into new new things, and it's really fun to see them be an extension of cyber tech to go represent cyber tech into the community to do that well or even better than we could be doing it. And so if you're in the thick of it, building your team, it's messy, it's heavy lifting. Every hire is going to teach you something. Um, but no matter what, keep leaning into those core values first and foremost as you build your business. Reflect, take time to learn from each one. And we're thankful that you tuned in to our podcast, The Next Gen Business Builders. As you're navigating, growing your business, scaling your team, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. So please leave us a review. Tell us what you think. Share this episode with someone else who might find it helpful. Your engagement on the podcast is invaluable to us. Thanks for the listen. And until next time, keep building what's next.